"Grandma, Mom secretly put the diamond ring in your purse while you were pouring tea." That whisper cut through the warm hum of the kitchen like a blade. For a second, I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I was 63 years old, a retired school teacher, a black woman who had survived things far harder than a birthday party in a suburban house, but in that moment, my body reacted before my mind did. My hand trembled. I turned slowly toward my purse, sitting where I'd left it beside the kitchen chair. Tommy stood inches from me, his small fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, his eyes wide with fear. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't a child exaggerating. I knew that look. I'd seen it on students who were about to tell the truth, even though they were terrified of what would happen next. "Are you sure?" I whispered. He nodded. She looked around first, then she did it fast. I opened my purse under the pretense of searching for my glasses. What I saw made the blood drain from my face. A diamond ring. Not costume jewelry, not something modest. This was large, heavy, unmistakably expensive. The kind of ring you lock away, insure, and brag about. The kind of ring that cost more than my car, more than my yearly groceries, more than anything I had ever owned in my life. My vision blurred for a moment. If someone found that ring in my purse, there would be no benefit of the doubt. Not for a poor, older black woman who lived alone and still shopped with coupons. I knew exactly how this would look. I knew exactly how it would be framed. I felt sick. In that instant, something else became clear too. This was not a mistake. This was not carelessness. This was a setup. Brianna, my daughter-in-law, my son's wife, had done this on purpose. It was her 30th birthday. The house was full of guests. Laughter, music, and polite smiles. Everything was staged to perfection, just like her. Brianna loved appearances. She loved control. And she loved reminding me, subtly and not so subtly, that I did not belong in her world. I closed my purse carefully. "Go sit down, sweetheart," I whispered to Tommy. "Don't say anything yet." He hesitated. "Grandma, I know," I said softly. "Trust me." As he walked away, my heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. But panic wouldn't save me. Thinking would. I slipped the ring out of my purse, my fingers slick with sweat, and waited. A moment later, Brianna swept into the kitchen like a gust of perfume and confidence. She was radiant, perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect smile. The kind of woman people believed without question. "Norma, you don't have to help," she said brightly. "Just relax." I watched her reflection in the microwave door. Watched the way her eyes flicked not to my face, but to my purse. That was all the confirmation I needed. When she turned away, I moved. Quickly, quietly, deliberately. I slipped the ring into the open side pocket of Brianna's designer handbag hanging on the back of a chair. My hands were steady now. Whatever fear I'd felt had hardened into something else. Resolve. Moments later, it began. "Oh my God!" Brianna cried from the living room. "My ring! My diamond ring! It's gone!" Conversation died instantly. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. Michael, my son, stood up. "What?" "It was right here," Brianna sobbed, clutching her chest. "I only took it off for a minute. That ring means everything to me." Her eyes swept the room, then landed on me. She didn't point. She didn't have to. "I'm not accusing anyone," she said, voice shaking just enough to sound sincere. "But it's very valuable." The implication hung in the air like smoke. I opened my mouth to speak. Before I could, Brianna let out a broken little cry. She sniffed loudly. "I hope no one was tempted. I know money can be hard sometimes." There it was. The room went quiet. I felt heat rise in my face, not from guilt, but from humiliation, from anger, from years of quiet disrespect finally taking shape in public. She looked at me then, not with fear, but with disdain. "I mean," she continued softly, "I know Norma's struggled. She's always talked about how expensive things are. And that ring," she shook her head, "it's more money than some people see in a lifetime." "Some people." Michael turned toward me, his face tightening. "Mom, did you touch Brianna's ring?" "No," I said immediately. "I didn't." "You were in the kitchen," Brianna said, wiping tears. "Alone. I was making tea." Michael frowned. "Mom, this doesn't look good." "It isn't good," I said, my voice shaking now. but it isn't what you think." Brianna let out a sharp laugh, no longer bothering to hide the edge in her voice. "Oh, please, let's not pretend. You live on a teacher's pension. You've always complained about money, and now my ring disappears?" The word you hung unspoken in the air. "You poor, you black, you desperate. I would never steal from you," I said, "or anyone." Michael's jaw clenched. "Then explain it." Before I could, Brianna reached for her phone. "This is serious," she said coldly. "That ring costs more than your entire yearly income. If it's missing, I'm calling the police." The word police landed like a gunshot. My knees nearly gave out. "Brianna," I said, "don't do this." She smiled through tears. "Why not? If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear." Michael looked at me, his eyes no longer uncertain, just hard. "Mom, if you took it, this is your chance to give it back." I stared at my son, the boy I had raised alone, the boy whose scraped knees I'd kissed, whose homework I'd stayed up late helping him finish. "I didn't take it," I said again. He shook his head. "I don't know what's happened to you lately. That hurt more than anything else." Then Tommy spoke. "I saw Mom put the ring in Grandma's purse." The room froze. Brianna spun toward him. "Tommy, stop lying." "I'm not," he said, his voice trembling but strong. "I saw you. For the first time that night." Brianna looked afraid. "And for the first time, I knew this wasn't just about a ring. This was about power, and it had already gone too far. If you felt that too, like this video and comment where you're watching from someone nearby might be watching with you." The air in the room had thickened, turned heavy, suffocating. You could feel the judgment hanging in it like fog. My grandson's voice still echoed in my ears. "I saw Mom put the ring in Grandma's purse." He had said it so simply, so plainly, no theatrics, no drama, just the kind of truth that a child speaks when their heart is clean. But truth in a room like that doesn't land like redemption, it lands like gasoline, and Brianna was already holding the match. She stared at Tommy as though he had grown horns. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice teetering between disbelief and fury. "Tommy, that's a terrible thing to accuse your own mother of." "I saw you," he repeated, quieter this time, but just as certain. Michael looked at his son like he'd never seen him before. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked, almost to himself. "Tommy, did Grandma ask you to say that?" The room turned on its axis. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. "I didn't ask him anything," I finally said. "Michael, don't you dare say that." But he wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. His gaze stayed fixed on his son, searching for cracks, for some indication that the boy was making it up. And I knew what he was thinking, because I knew my son. He wasn't wondering if Tommy was lying, he was wondering why his son would lie for me. "I didn't lie," Tommy said, his lower lip trembling now. "Grandma didn't even know. I just saw it and told her." Brianna stepped forward, her face flushed. "Honey, you must have misunderstood. I would never do something like that. That's not who I am." I nearly laughed. Who she was. This woman had manipulated Michael from the very beginning, the sweet girl with the soft voice, always just frazzled enough to seem harmless, always trying her best while quietly taking over every decision, every corner of his life. She had learned early on that being underestimated was her greatest weapon, and now she was using it against a child. "I'm sorry, everyone," Brianna said, turning to the room. "This has gotten so out of hand. I think maybe we should call it a night. Call it a night. Brush it under the rug. Pretend it didn't happen. Let the black woman take the shame home with her like a party favor." "I'm not leaving," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm enough to halt the movement in the room. People turned. Glasses froze midair. "Excuse me?" Brianna asked, her voice sharpening. "You heard me," I said. "I'm not going anywhere until this is resolved." Michael stepped forward. "Mom, please, this is embarrassing." "For who?" I shot back. "For your wife who was caught trying to frame me, or for your son who told the truth and now has to watch his parents pretend he's lying." Silence. Tommy looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time, relief. A child should never feel responsible for whether adults tell the truth, but he'd been carrying that burden since the moment he whispered to me in the kitchen. "Let's check the bag," I said, pointing to Brianna's purse. "If I planted the ring in her bag like she claims, then let's check and see what else I supposedly planted." Brianna blanched. Michael hesitated. We're not searching people's things like criminals. She wanted to call the police 5 minutes ago, I reminded him. So either we go through with that, or we open the bag. The room waited. Brianna's hands hovered protectively over her purse. She laughed, light and hollow. This is ridiculous. You really think I'm going to let people dig through my things like I'm some kind of thief? I'm not thinking anything, I said, but I'm done being accused. Then something happened I wasn't expecting. James, my brother-in-law, Michael's uncle, stood up. He was a quiet man, long retired from the post office, but respected in the family. Brianna, he said softly, if you didn't do anything, just open the bag. Let's end this. She stared at him like he'd betrayed her. And then, she did it. She picked up the purse, turned toward the kitchen, and emptied the contents onto the table. Wallet, lip gloss, keys, a pack of tissues, a folded receipt. And there it was. The diamond ring. Right in the open. It sparkled like it had never meant to hide at all. Everyone stared. Someone gasped. I didn't. Brianna's voice cracked. She must have put it there. She must have snuck it in when I wasn't looking. Tommy shook his head. She didn't. She put it there before I told Grandma. Michael stood frozen, and for the first time, I saw something in my son's eyes crack. Something long buried under years of manipulation and emotional distance. His voice came out hoarse. Brianna, he said slowly. Did you do this? Of course not, she snapped. This is exactly what she wants. She's jealous. She's always been jealous. I laughed, quietly. Not out of joy, but out of the absurdity. Jealous? I asked. Jealous of what, Brianna? Your house? Your husband? Your life built on lies and performances? I've worked for everything I have. No, I said. You've taken everything you wanted, and now you thought you could take my dignity too. She turned on me, shaking with fury. You don't belong in this family. I made this family. That stopped her. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to cry. My voice was my weapon, and I wielded it like a blade honed from years of silence. I raised Michael on my own after his father died. I put myself through night school. I packed lunches and graded papers and paid bills by candlelight when they shut off the power. You think I care about your ring? The room was dead quiet. Enough, Michael said finally, his voice low. I need everyone to leave. People murmured, unsure. I mean it, he said, looking around. Please, we'll talk about this later. Slowly, guests began to shuffle out. Hugs were half-hearted. Conversations hushed. The air crackled with discomfort. When the door closed behind the last guest, Michael turned toward us. I need to speak to my son, he said. Alone. I nodded and touched Tommy's shoulder. You did the right thing, I whispered. He nodded, but his face was pale. He looked older than his years. As I walked past Brianna, she didn't look at me. But I knew this wasn't over. Women like her don't give up power easily, and I was no longer interested in playing nice. I waited outside on the porch while Michael spoke to Tommy. The night air clung to my skin like heavy cloth, thick with the scent of hydrangeas from the garden I'd helped plant 2 summers ago. Funny, isn't it? You build something with love, dig into the dirt with your bare hands, and somehow it still ends up being claimed by someone else. From inside, muffled voices rose and fell. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew the tone. Michael was hurt and confused, maybe even ashamed. Tommy, sweet child that he was, had simply done what no adult in that room dared, he told the truth. The porch light flickered above me. For a moment, I thought about leaving, about walking off that porch and never coming back to that house. But then what would that teach Tommy? That standing up for what's right ends in abandonment? No. I sat on the wooden bench swing, straightened my back, and waited. The door creaked open. Michael stepped out, his face a shade paler, lips drawn tight like he'd just swallowed something bitter. She's saying you manipulated him, he said flatly. No greeting, no apology, just the raw discomfort of a man stuck between the 2 women pulling his world apart. I figured she would, I said. It's the only play she has left. He didn't argue. Did you? He asked, barely meeting my eyes. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to scream, to shake him by the shoulders, to drag him into every moment of quiet disrespect Brianna had hurled at me over the years, each one small enough to excuse but sharp enough to cut. Instead, I said, Michael, I never asked Tommy to lie. I didn't even know about the ring until he told me. He nodded once. Slowly, the kind of nod a man gives when he's halfway to believing you, but not all the way. I need time, he said. You've had time, I replied gently. Years of it. You just didn't want to see. He ran a hand through his hair, and for a brief moment I saw my little boy in him, the child who clung to my apron strings when thunder scared him, who begged for pancakes at midnight after bad dreams. I just want peace, he muttered. Peace doesn't come from pretending, I said. It comes from facing the truth. He didn't reply. Just looked down at his feet like the answers might be written in the concrete. I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight, I added, rising to my feet. I think that's best. Do you want me to pay for it? He asked automatically. I turned to him. No, Michael. I've paid enough. The next morning, I checked into a modest inn off Glenwood Avenue. Nothing fancy, just clean sheets and the promise of silence. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched the sunlight crawl across the carpet, my mind already spinning through what came next. Because this wasn't just about one ring, one moment. This was a pattern. A strategy, and if Brianna had gone this far once, she'd go farther next time. I knew the signs. I had seen women like her before, first as a teacher, then as a neighbor, and even once as a friend. They operated in half-truths, weaponized charm, and always made sure to win over those in power before isolating their target. I had been her target for a long time, but she'd miscalculated this time. She'd underestimated the woman who had worked 2 jobs to send her son to college, who'd nursed her mother through hospice without ever missing a mortgage payment, who'd once stood in front of a school board full of condescending men and demanded better funding for her students. Brianna thought I was weak. She didn't know I was just patient. Later that afternoon, I received a call from James. Norma, he said. I heard you left. I did. He exhaled into the phone. This whole thing, it's a damn mess. Yes, it is. She's telling everyone it was a misunderstanding. Of course she is. He was quiet for a moment. You need help? I paused. I need a lawyer. He didn't hesitate. I know a good one. My niece, Vanessa. Smart girl. Handles family estate issues too. Good, I said, because something tells me this isn't over. That evening, I met Vanessa at a local cafe. She was sharp mid-30s, confident, the kind of woman who could quote legal precedent while stirring her coffee. Tell me everything, she said, flipping open her notepad. I did. From the moment I arrived at the party to the second the ring reappeared in Brianna's purse, I explained about the house, the ownership split between Michael and me, and the trust fund set up for Tommy overseen by me until he turned 18. Vanessa's pen stopped. That's the motive, she said. I know. She wanted you discredited. If she could get you labeled unstable or dishonest, she could pressure Michael to take full control of the assets. I nodded. And I think this was just step 1. Vanessa leaned back, tapping her pen against her chin. Then it's time we make sure there's no step 2. She handed me a folder. This outlines what we can do to protect your legal standing, but beyond that, we need evidence. I slid Tommy's drawing across the table, a picture he had given me weeks ago, labeled Mom Watching Grandma. It showed Brianna peeking around a corner while I poured tea, crude but telling. Vanessa smiled. It's not hard proof, but it's something. I'll get more, I said. She's careful, but not careful enough. That night, back in my hotel room, I sat at the edge of the bed and opened the old photo album I always kept in my suitcase. Pictures of Michael as a boy. Pictures of us in the kitchen, him sitting on the counter as I stirred batter. Photos of my late husband, his smile wide and arms strong. I thought of everything we'd built, everything Brianna now tried to erase or claim, and I made a quiet vow. She would not win. Not with lies. Not with manipulation. And certainly not by turning my own son against me. If she wanted a war, she had picked the wrong grandmother. The next morning, I went back to my room at the inn and sat down with a notepad. Old habit. When things in life got tangled, I always turned to paper. As a teacher, that's how I managed my classroom. Lists, notes, a structure to contain chaos. And right now, my life needed structure. At the top, I wrote in all caps, what she's after. 1. Control of the house. 2. Full access to Michael's finances. 3. Power over the trust fund. 4. Getting rid of me quietly and respectfully. Then I wrote the next line, one that made my stomach clench. How far will she go? The silence in that room was deafening. By noon, I was back on the phone with Vanessa. She had already filed a formal notice to secure my legal rights to the shared property, our family home. If Brianna tried to force a financial separation or move legal ownership around, there'd now be paperwork standing in her way. She's smart, Vanessa warned, her voice cool and clear, but she's not subtle. That stunt with the ring, that was reckless. It gives us an angle. She thinks people see what they expect, I said. She's banking on the fact that I look like someone easy to discard. There was a pause. She's not the first to make that mistake, Vanessa replied. I smiled. That same evening, I got a message from Tommy. It was short, sent from his school's iPad. Grandma, are you okay? Mom said you're not coming back. I miss you. Tommy. I had to sit with that for a while. The ache of it. He was just a child, 11 years old, already made to feel like he had to pick sides in a battle he never started. I couldn't answer right away. My hands were shaking. But eventually, I wrote, I'm okay, sweetheart. I'll always be here, no matter what. After I hit send, I stared at the screen a long while. I knew Brianna would probably read it. She monitored everything, Tommy's school accounts, his location, even the shows he watched. She'd taught him early that privacy was a privilege she controlled. It made my next decision clear. I needed to see him in person. 2 days later, I went to his school under the pretense of dropping off a book he'd left at my house the week prior. Vanessa had coached me on exactly what to say. Schools, especially ones in wealthy districts like Brianna's, followed policy by the letter. But I was still listed on his emergency contact list. And I knew Tommy's teacher, Miss Davenport. She'd actually been one of my student teachers nearly 20 years ago. When she saw me, her face lit up with warmth and surprise. Miss Norma, she said, rushing out of the classroom with that same bright energy I remembered. Oh, it's been too long. What brings you by? I just came to drop this off for Tommy. His mother didn't answer my message. She nodded, a flicker of something like unease crossing her face. Tommy's had a rough couple of days, quiet, kind of distracted. I smiled gently. Would it be all right if I said hello? She hesitated for a second, then nodded. Just a minute. Let me get him. He came out slowly, his backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes tired for a boy his age. When he saw me, something broke in his expression. He stepped forward fast, wrapped his arms around me and whispered, I told the truth, Grandma. I promise. I know, baby, I whispered back, stroking his hair. I believe you. We stood there for a minute, just holding each other. Mom says you're mad at her. I'm not mad, I said softly. But sometimes when people do something very wrong, we have to step back and decide how to protect ourselves. He nodded, like he understood more than he should. Before he turned back toward class, he pulled something out of his pocket and pressed it into my palm. A folded note. Hide it, he whispered. She can't see. I tucked it deep into my coat. Only when I got back to the inn did I unfold it. It was written in his uneven, slanted printing. Mom was talking to someone on the phone. She said, if we push her to slip up, we can make her seem unstable. Then she said, the memory thing will work if she forgets to lock up again. I'm scared, but I love you. Tommy. I sat there in stunned silence. It wasn't just the manipulation anymore. It was premeditated character assassination. She was laying a trap, one carefully crafted to make me look like an old, confused woman losing her grip on reality. She wanted to discredit me legally, morally, and emotionally. She wasn't just trying to push me out, she wanted to erase me. That night, Vanessa and I met again. This changes everything, she said, her eyes blazing. We have a timeline now, a motive, and a witness. Tommy's note is damning. But will it hold up? I asked. Alone? No. But if we can catch her doing something else, something verifiable, we can expose the pattern. The courts take elderly manipulation seriously, especially when it comes to financial or custodial abuse. I looked out the cafe window. The city lights glinted on the rain-slicked streets like scattered glass. She wants me to fall apart, I said. But I won't. Vanessa leaned in. Then we hit her where it hurts. Public image, legal stability, community standing. The ring stunt was step one. We make sure her next step takes her off a cliff. 3 days later, I received an invitation. A family dinner at Brianna and Michael's house, handwritten in Brianna's cursive. She even sprayed the card with perfume. To clear the air, it read, "For family, for peace." But I knew better. She wasn't calling for peace. She was baiting me, testing the waters to see if her narrative had taken root, and maybe, just maybe, waiting for me to crumble. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't coming to beg for forgiveness. I was coming with eyes wide open. The sun had already dipped beneath the rooftops when I arrived at Michael and Brianna's house that evening. The house looked as it always had: trimmed hedges, twinkling porch lights, and a little flag fluttering near the mailbox that read, "Bless this home." But everything about it felt staged. From the minute I stepped out of the car, the air itself seemed to hum with a kind of forced calm. Like walking into a theater where the actors already know their lines, only they're all lying. I stood for a moment on the sidewalk, gripping the casserole I'd brought. Not because I wanted to feed anyone, but because I wasn't going to give Brianna the satisfaction of saying I came empty-handed. Appearances still mattered in battles like this. I stepped up to the door and knocked. It opened within seconds. Brianna stood there, wrapped in a soft blush-pink sweater and pearls, as if she'd stepped straight out of a magazine ad for gracious suburban motherhood. Her smile was wide, her voice syrupy sweet. "Norma," she said, drawing out my name like honey over a razor. "We're so glad you could make it." I nodded. "You asked for peace. I'm here." She stepped aside to let me in. "That's what families do," she said lightly. "We forgive. We move forward." The words clanged in my ears. Forgive? As if I had done something wrong. As if her attempt to frame me for theft had been a little misunderstanding we could all laugh about now over pot roast. Inside, the house was warm and well lit. Candles flickered on the sideboard, a roast baked in the oven. Michael stood by the dining room table, looking tired. He offered me a brief smile, which I returned without warmth. "Hey, Mom." "Michael." Tommy peeked out from the hallway, his eyes cautious. I gave him a small smile and a nod. He relaxed slightly but didn't come closer. Brianna ushered me to a seat at the table, already set with linen napkins, gold-rimmed plates, and crystal water glasses. She was playing hostess now. Hard. "I thought we could all use a reset," she said, sliding the roast onto the table with a flourish. "You know, start fresh." I didn't answer. I simply watched her. Every move, every glance, the way she smiled too wide, the way her eyes never rested too long in one place. She was covering something. That much was clear. Michael served the food in silence. Tommy sat across from me, still quiet. I could tell from the way he was slouched in his seat that he had been coached before this dinner, probably told to behave, to stay quiet, to let the adults talk. Brianna raised her glass. "Too healing," she said. I didn't raise mine. She noticed. "Still upset?" she asked, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "I thought we agreed to move past that little incident." "There's a difference between moving past something and pretending it didn't happen," I said. Michael cleared his throat. "Mom." "No, let her speak," Brianna said sweetly. "We're all adults here. We should be able to have an honest conversation." Honest. That word, coming from her mouth, nearly made me choke. "I'm here because of Tommy," I said, keeping my voice even, "and because I don't run away from hard things. Not because I think anything's been resolved." Brianna set her fork down, her smile cracking slightly. "Well then," she said, "maybe this isn't the right time." "That depends on what you mean by right," I replied. "If by right you mean convenient for you, then no, this probably isn't." Michael pushed his plate back. "Can we please just have one dinner without drama?" I looked at him sharply. Drama is what happens when the truth is ignored long enough. It has to raise its voice. Brianna turned to him, placing her hand over his. "See? This is exactly the kind of energy that makes peace impossible." I stood. "I didn't come here for this," I said. "I came to check on my grandson and to show that I'm not afraid of you." Her smile froze. "I'm not going to scream or break down or do anything else you're hoping for," I continued, "because I know what this is. I know you're trying to make me look unstable, irrational. I know what you said on the phone." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the memory trap," I said. "About how you planned to make me look forgetful. How you said I'd slip if pushed hard enough. Her lips parted slightly. I stepped closer. Tommy heard you. And wrote it down. In his own words. She stood too now. That's not true. That's manipulation. You would know, I replied calmly. Michael stood as well, caught between us like a man watching his house burn from both ends. Everyone, stop. Tommy stood. I heard her, he said, his voice loud and clear. I wasn't lying. The room went silent. Brianna's face turned crimson. Michael turned toward her. Is it true? Her jaw tensed. He's a child. Children mishear things all the time. I didn't mishear, Tommy said. You said it while talking to Aunt Lisa. You said Grandma was slipping, and if we kept pushing, people would believe she was losing it. Brianna's voice broke into something unhinged. He's just repeating things he doesn't understand. He's a kid. I looked at her. And you used him. You tried to make him your pawn, but he's stronger than you thought. She laughed, sharp, bitter, humorless. You think this makes you the hero? You think this makes you some kind of victim? I don't need to be the hero, I said. I just need the truth to be louder than your lies. And with that, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small digital recorder. I pressed play. If we push her to slip up, we can make her seem unstable. Her voice, her exact words, her trap exposed. Brianna's mouth fell open. You bugged my house? No, I said. I recorded the note. Tommy read it to me, and I read it into this myself, to protect him, to protect myself. Michael staggered back slightly, the truth finally sinking in. You lied, he whispered to Brianna. You tried to ruin her. She turned on him. Oh, please. She's been undermining me from the start. She never wanted me in this family. I wanted someone who didn't see me as disposable, I said. I wanted someone who would love my son without trying to erase me. Tommy started to cry then. Silent tears. I walked over and pulled him close. You did nothing wrong, I said into his hair. Nothing. Michael looked lost. Torn. Shattered. I need to think, he said, backing away. I need time. You've had time, I said again, echoing our last conversation. He looked at me, then at his wife, then down at his son, and walked out the door. Brianna stood alone, shaking, cornered, and for the first time, I saw her mask slip. Underneath all the pearls and parties, she was just a frightened girl, desperate to keep control of a world she never built. I took Tommy by the hand. Let's go, I said, and this time, no one stopped me. The drive back to the inn was quiet. Tommy sat beside me in the passenger seat, his knees pulled to his chest, forehead pressed against the window. I kept glancing at him, remembering the child who used to sit in a high chair, clapping every time I made pancakes in bear shapes. Now he was in the middle of a war he never asked for, a witness to a truth adults were too cowardly to confront. You did good, I said softly, one hand steady on the wheel. You were brave. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, Is Dad mad at me? No, sweetheart, I replied. He's mad at what the truth means. That's different. We pulled into the lot behind the inn. The headlights cast our shadows long across the cracked pavement. I didn't tell him this, but I'd asked Vanessa earlier that day if we could start preparing for the next legal steps. I had a strong feeling Brianna would strike back soon. She wasn't the type to lose quietly. Once inside, I made us both some warm chamomile tea and microwaved leftover casserole. Tommy barely picked at his plate. I didn't mean to ruin dinner, he said after a long silence. You didn't ruin anything, I said. You saved something. He looked up at me, his young face marked with doubt. What did I save? My name, my dignity, I said. Sometimes that's more important than dinner. He cracked a small, sad smile. Mom always says I talk too much. She says that so you'll stop telling the truth. That stuck. I could see it sink into him, and I hated that this was the world he had to grow up in. That night, after I tucked him into the spare bed and kissed his forehead, I stood in the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. 63 years of life, of sacrifice, of silence. A black woman who'd raised a child alone, worked her hands to the bone, and still had to prove her innocence in a room full of people who claimed to love her. The woman in the mirror didn't look tired. She looked ready. The next morning, I let Tommy sleep in and headed straight to Vanessa's office. She was already on the phone when I arrived, but her eyes lit up when she saw me through the glass. She wrapped up quickly and waved me in. "She's called Lisa and a few other friends," Vanessa said, skipping formalities, "trying to spin the dinner as you ambushing her, playing the victim, standard." I figured. "But she's slipping," she added. "Your recording shook her. Her panic's getting louder." "Good. Let her panic," I said. Vanessa handed me a printed document. "I think it's time we file for injunctive protection, restrict her from making legal or financial decisions that affect the house or the trust. We don't need full conservatorship, just a freeze on authority pending further review." "And we can do that." "With what we have?" Vanessa nodded. "Yes, but we'll need to move fast. I'll sign it." "Good. And while we do that," she said, leaning back in her chair, "you need to show the community who you are, because Brianna's biggest weapon right now isn't the law. It's perception." I frowned. "You want me to go public?" "No. I want you to tell your story to the people who matter, the ones who've been told lies. You'd be surprised how quickly people shift when they're reminded of who you really are." I sat with that for a moment, and then I said, "Let's make some calls." 2 days later, I hosted a brunch, just a small gathering at the local community center, 10, maybe 12 people, all longtime family friends, old church acquaintances. Michael's godmother, Miss Edna, my former neighbor, Mr. Julius, who still mowed lawns in his 70s. Even a few of my former students, now grown, came by when they heard I'd invited them. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just told the story, from the beginning. The party, the setup, the ring, the lie, and my grandson's courage. I showed them Tommy's drawing. I read his note. I played the audio, not to humiliate Brianna, but to set the record straight. And when I finished, the room was still. Then Miss Edna stood, voice trembling. "You gave your life to this family," she said. "To your son, to this community. We know you. We've always known you." And that's when I realized I wasn't alone. Not anymore. That night, I received a call from Michael. He didn't say hello. He just said, "I'm at a hotel." I waited. I told Brianna I needed space. She didn't take it well. I imagined her voice, sharp and weeping, playing every victim card she could. "I'm not sure what to do," he admitted. "I feel like everything's falling apart." "Sometimes things have to fall apart," I said gently, "so we can see what they were really made of." "I just keep thinking," he trailed off. "What?" "I let her treat you like that. For years. And I didn't stop it. I let the silence stretch." He needed to feel the weight of it. "I think I wanted to believe you two just didn't get along," he whispered. "I didn't want to fight," I said. "I wanted respect." He sighed. "What happens now? You take care of your son. And I take care of the truth." And then I said something I hadn't said in a long time. "I still love you, Michael, but I won't let you protect her lies with my silence." "I know," he said quietly. "I think I'm finally starting to." As we hung up, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Brianna was unraveling, and the truth was beginning to shine. I woke the next morning to a knock on my inn door. 3 soft raps, measured, cautious. When I opened it, I found Michael standing there, his shoulders hunched in the gray hoodie I'd bought him back in college. His eyes were red-rimmed, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked in without waiting for a response and sat heavily on the edge of the spare bed, the one Tommy had slept in just a few nights ago. "I left her," he said. I sat in the armchair, heart steady. Not triumphant, not bitter, just bracing for what would come next. She was screaming when I walked out. Called me a coward. Said I was choosing you over my family. I gave a dry smile. "You are choosing your family. She just forgot who started it." He nodded slowly. "She's not who I thought she was. Or maybe she is, and I didn't want to admit it." "That's how it starts," I said. "They don't change. The mask just slips." He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years without defensiveness. "She said she'd ruin you," he whispered. "Said if I didn't come back she'd go public, accuse you of being unstable. Said you were already halfway there in everyone's eyes." My jaw clenched. "And you believe her?" "I believe she's capable of anything now," he said. "I'm just sorry it took me this long to see it." He buried his face in his hands. I let the silence settle. "You can't fix everything she's broken," I said gently. But you can stop handing her the tools. Later that day, Michael joined Vanessa and me in her office. He signed the official document stating he no longer wished for Brianna to have joint oversight over the trust fund or household legal matters. Vanessa moved quickly to file the request for emergency court review. She's going to lash out, Vanessa warned. She'll probably try to smear both of you before we can get a court ruling. Michael nodded. She already threatened it. Let her, I said. Let her show the world who she really is. Still, I felt the knot tighten in my stomach. People like Brianna didn't go down easily, and she had always been good at dressing cruelty and kindness, planting just enough doubt to keep herself clean. We needed more than truth. We needed proof. 3 days later, she gave it to us. Vanessa called early in the morning, her voice electric. Check your inbox. I opened the email she'd forwarded. Attached was a video clip from one of Brianna's recent mommy influencer live streams. She had taken to posting weekly videos from her pristine kitchen, doling out advice on everything from parenting to home organization. But this clip was different. It started normally, Brianna smiling at the camera, walking viewers through her 5-minute morning reset. But halfway through, the camera caught something unexpected. Tommy in the background, struggling to open a stuck cabinet. Brianna snapped at him, sharp, cold. Can you not touch that right now? I told you everything needs to look perfect. He flinched. She caught herself, glancing at the camera, then smiled again, false and bright. Sorry about that, folks. Kids, right? But what she said next chilled me. I always say, if they can't learn by kindness, they learn by fear. She laughed. So did some of the commenters. But others didn't. Vanessa's voice was tight. It's enough. It's public. And it's exactly the kind of thing that paints a picture of someone unfit to influence a child's emotional well-being, let alone manage their future. She'd given us the rope. All we had to do now was hold on. The following Sunday, Tommy had a scheduled visit with Brianna, court-mandated shared time until things were fully resolved. He was hesitant, but brave. I'll be okay, he said, hugging me tight at the door. I know what to watch for now. He walked to the car where Brianna was waiting. She didn't get out, just rolled down the window and waved with a too bright smile. But I caught the steel in her eyes. She was preparing something. I just didn't know what. That night, Tommy called. Grandma! She tried to take my tablet, the school one. She's not allowed to do that. I know, but she said I've been messaging you behind her back and that it's against the rules. Did she take it? No, he said. I told her the school tracks everything and she backed off, but she was mad. He hesitated. She asked me if I'd ever lied for you. The air drained from my lungs. What did you say? I told her no, that I don't lie for anyone, and then she got quiet. Really quiet. You did the right thing, I said, swallowing hard. I think she's scared, he whispered. I think she should be. Later that week, Vanessa called again. The court date was set 2 weeks away. The judge had agreed to review the evidence for a temporary guardianship reassignment and financial restriction. She's on edge, Vanessa said. Her attorney's pushing for a deal, wants you to drop your petition in exchange for her agreeing to move out and give up rights to the trust. I laughed. She wants me quiet. She wants to walk away without a public stain. And what do you recommend? I asked. Vanessa didn't hesitate. We don't drop anything. I nodded. She made this bed. Let her lie in it. That night, as I tucked Tommy into bed, he was staying with me full-time until the hearing. I watched him drift off, his hand still clutching the little journal I'd given him. A safe space to write the things he was too scared to say aloud. I stood at the window afterward, looking out at the street below. And I thought about all the women like me, women who gave everything, who built homes and raised children and stood behind people who stepped over them when it was convenient. I thought about how many times we swallow disrespect, get talked over, get called bitter for noticing the injustice. But I wasn't swallowing anymore. I was speaking. And this time, the world would listen. The day of the hearing arrived with a pale sky and an unsettling stillness in the air. I woke early, far before dawn, my body alive with nerves I hadn't felt in years, not since the first time I stood in front of a school board to defend a student from being expelled over something they didn't do. Back then, I was nervous for a child. Today, I was nervous for the same reason. Only now, the child was my own grandson. Tommy sat at the kitchen table, still in his pajamas, spooning cereal without enthusiasm. I brushed a hand over his hair as I passed him. "You don't need to worry, baby. You've already done more than enough." He looked up at me. "Is it bad that I'm scared?" "No," I said. "It means you still care. People who don't care don't get scared." He offered me a small smile. "Are you scared?" "I'm tired," I said. "And tired people fight differently. We fight like we've got nothing left to lose." At the courthouse, the building itself felt colder than usual. The long halls of polished stone echoed with footsteps and whispers. Vanessa met us in the atrium, dressed sharp in navy blue, binder in hand and jaw set. "She's already here," she said, nodding toward the end of the corridor. "Brianna." She sat with her lawyer, a smooth-looking man in a charcoal suit, her blonde hair in a soft bun, her clothes simple, unthreatening. She looked meek, performing meekness, rather. When her eyes met mine, I saw it. The chill, the calculation. Behind her, Michael stood alone, not beside her, not beside me. In the middle, still, but not for long. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, opened the session briskly. Vanessa began with a clear statement that we were not seeking full custody, but rather a restriction of Brianna's legal authority over the family estate and trust fund until further investigation. Her words were measured, surgical. Then she played the audio. "If we push her to slip up, we can make her seem unstable." The courtroom was silent. Brianna flinched, then quickly leaned toward her lawyer, whispering. When it was their turn, her lawyer stood and began spinning a web of excuses. "That clip is taken out of context," he argued. "It was sarcasm, frustrated, private sarcasm, not a plan, not malicious intent." He looked toward the judge. "My client is under stress. She's been caring for a child, managing a household, dealing with a difficult mother-in-law." Vanessa stood. "Let's be clear, this isn't about tension between in-laws. This is a coordinated attempt to paint an elderly woman as mentally unstable for financial control." She handed over Tommy's note. The judge read it quietly, then looked at Brianna. "Did you make these comments, Mrs. Whitman?" Brianna licked her lips. I may have said something like that in frustration, but I would never harm Norma. She's family." "Then why did your son feel the need to write this?" the judge asked, holding up the note. Brianna's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Vanessa leaned slightly forward. "We're asking for a 6-month freeze on Brianna's access to the trust. During that time, we'll submit all additional documentation, and a court-appointed social worker can assess the household environment." The judge nodded. "This is a serious matter, and what I see here raises significant concerns." She turned to Brianna. "Until this investigation is complete, your legal access to the Whitman Trust is suspended." Brianna gasped. "But, Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding." "You may submit a formal objection through your attorney," the judge replied coolly. "But until then, the order stands." Then she looked at me. "And Miss Whitman, you have shown commendable patience and restraint. I sincerely hope this hearing helps bring peace to your family." I bowed my head slightly. "Thank you, Your Honor." Outside the courtroom, Brianna stormed past us, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. Her lawyer rushed to keep up, already murmuring damage control. Michael lingered. He approached slowly, his hands in his coat pockets. "You were right," he said. "I didn't say anything. Just let him speak." She had a backup plan. She wanted access to Tommy's education fund next, said she needed it for a learning enrichment project, but I think she meant another business idea. Or worse. I nodded. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." "You're doing the right thing now," I said. "That's all that matters. I'm going to file for shared custody," he said quietly. "Real custody. I can't leave Tommy in her care unsupervised anymore." I placed a hand on his arm. "Then I'll stand with you." That evening, Tommy and I went out for dinner. Nothing fancy, just a small family diner with chipped leather booths and cherry pie that always tasted like summer. He drew on a napkin with the crayons the waitress gave him, sketching a little house, a tall woman with a bun, and a boy with a backpack. "That's us," he said. I nodded. "And what's that?" He pointed to a door beside the house. "That's where we put the lies. We lock them up." I smiled. "Well," I said, "let's hope we don't need to open that door again." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thanks for believing me." "No," I said. "Thank you for saving me." Later, back at the inn, I sat by the window and looked out at the quiet street. The fight wasn't over, but we'd reached a turning point. The court saw her. The world was starting to see me, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel invisible. I felt whole. It had been nearly a week since the court hearing, and while the legal tide had begun turning in my favor, the storm outside the courthouse was just beginning. Brianna wasn't the kind of woman to lose and stay quiet. No, when you stripped power from someone who fed on perception, their retaliation wasn't always legal. It was social, and in our town, that could be just as vicious. On Monday morning, I stopped by the neighborhood grocery store, the kind with hand-lettered signs and fresh honey from a local beekeeper. As I walked past the flower display, I caught the sudden hush that swept the produce aisle. 2 women from church were whispering by the oranges. One turned just enough for our eyes to meet, then quickly looked away. I knew that look. Pity. Maybe. Or fear. At checkout, the teenage clerk, normally sweet and chatty, gave me a stiff smile. No small talk. When I reached my car, I checked my phone. 5 missed calls, 2 blocked voicemails, and a message from a friend at the community center. "Norma, are you okay? Have you seen the blog post?" I opened the link. There it was, posted on a local lifestyle site that covered everything from yard sales to charity brunches. "When Grandmas Lie, a daughter-in-law's silent suffering." There was no name attached, of course, but the story was clear. An elderly woman with declining memory had been confused at a family party, misplaced a valuable item, then accused the daughter-in-law of setting her up. The writer never said my name, but it didn't take much reading between the lines. Brianna was painting herself as the graceful victim cast aside by an aging, bitter matriarch. The comments were worse. "She's probably lonely and jealous. I've seen it happen in my own family. Careful elders can be manipulative too. Doesn't mean they're always right." I closed the screen and sat there in the car, the weight of it pressing against my chest like wet wool. She wasn't trying to win in court. She was trying to win outside of it. That evening, Vanessa met me at the inn. She'd already seen the blog. "I figured she'd do this," she said. "We need to counter it." "How? I can't play her game." "No, but we can control the truth," she said. "We don't fight a fire with fire. We smother it with facts." She showed me a plan. Reach out to the people who did know me. Former colleagues, community members, students. Get a few testimonials. Not for court, for public record. Stories that reminded people who I was before this mess. "She wants to make you into a shadow," Vanessa said. "Let's give them light." Over the next few days, the stories began rolling in. A former student who now taught at the high school wrote, "Miss Whitman saw me when no one else did. She saved my future." An old church friend said, "Norma stood up for our choir director when others turned their backs. She has always protected the voiceless." And from the woman who'd run the local food pantry for decades, "When I broke my leg, it was Norma who showed up every morning for 2 weeks with hot meals, no cameras, no praise, just kindness." We posted them publicly simple, heartfelt truths. No accusations, no bitterness, just memory. But real memory. Still, Brianna didn't stop. Midweek, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a flyer for an assisted living facility with a sticky note attached that read, "You might feel more at home here." My hand trembled. Not from fear, from rage. This was psychological warfare. Subtle, cowardly, cruel. I showed it to Vanessa. "She's trying to provoke you into reacting," she said, "so she can say you're unraveling." "Well," I said, folding the flyer slowly, "let's give her silence instead." Because silence, I'd learned, was the one thing people like Brianna couldn't bear. On Friday, I was folding laundry when Tommy came into the room, his expression troubled. "Grandma," he said, "is it true what Mom said about you and the police?" I froze. "What did she say?" "That when Dad was little, you got arrested." My throat tightened. "No, honey, that never happened. She said you were in trouble for stealing something from your school, a teacher's purse." I sat down, heart heavy. "She made that up," I said. "But you deserve the truth." I told him about the time I was accused of mismanaging funds for a school field trip, how a check had gone missing, how I'd been blamed, but it turned out the new vice principal had accidentally deposited it into the wrong account. I'd been suspended during the investigation, but fully cleared. I even got an apology. But that wasn't the part people remembered, I said. They remembered the rumor, not the truth. He nodded slowly. She only tells me part of things, and always when I can't ask questions. That's how manipulation works, I said. It hides inside a half-truth. He looked up at me. I trust you. I cupped his face gently. That's all I need. The following day, something unexpected happened. The same local blog that published Brianna's piece reached out to me. The editor, a woman named Clara, whom I vaguely remembered from PTA meetings years ago, left a voicemail. I'd like to offer you space to respond. Fair's fair. At first, I considered saying no. Why defend myself against shadows? But then I thought of every woman who'd ever been dismissed. Every mother, grandmother, aunt, or neighbor who'd been quietly erased with polite cruelty. I called Clara back. I'll write the piece, I said. But on one condition. Name it. I want to tell the whole truth. No framing, no edits. My voice, start to finish. She paused. Then I'll send you a deadline. That night, I sat at the table and began typing. My hands moved slowly, then faster, as the words poured out. Not just about Brianna, not even just about me, but about us, the ones who carry family legacies on tired shoulders, who survive betrayal with grace, and who refuse to disappear. The ones who remember everything? And make sure the world does too. I sat at the inn's modest wooden desk, the glow of the lamp spilling across a fresh Word document. The cursor blinked at me like it was waiting for something wise, something angry, maybe. But I didn't want to write like Brianna. I didn't want to perform pain. I wanted to tell the truth, and I did. It took me hours. Paragraph after paragraph, I laid it bare. I wrote about the ring, the birthday dinner, the moment I realized a woman I had opened my heart to had planned to ruin my name with a flick of her fingers and a well-timed accusation. I described the shock not just of the false theft, but of my own son turning away while it happened. But more than that, I wrote about the years before, about the times I said yes when I should have said no, about standing at the back of birthday parties I helped pay for, watching Brianna take credit for cakes I baked and decorations I hung. I wrote about being the kind of woman people don't see until they need something, the quiet strength of invisible mothers. And I ended with this. I don't need you to like me. I don't even need you to believe me. I only need the truth to be louder than the lie, because that's what I'm teaching my grandson, that one person's silence can be another's sentence, and I refuse to be silent anymore. The piece went live 3 days later. Clara sent me the final draft before publishing, and I read it again, just to be sure I wasn't letting emotion cloud the facts. But no, every word still rang true. She titled it simply, A Letter from the Other Side of the Table. The response was almost immediate. The blog post began to circulate, shared across community groups, church chats, even the school board's staff email chain. And unlike Brianna's whisper campaign, this one had weight, real names, real dates, a clear timeline, a voice that couldn't be twisted. People started reaching out. A woman I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me. I always knew something was off. You deserved better. We're behind you. Even Pastor Mark sent an email asking if I'd be open to clearing the air during Sunday's community discussion hour. I wasn't naive. I knew not everyone would believe me. But the scales were shifting, and I could feel it. Michael called that evening. I read your letter, he said. His voice was raw, strained, like the truth had finally sunk past the armor he'd built around Brianna for years. I didn't protect you, he admitted, and I should have. I was weak. No, I replied. You were blind. That's different. Weak people see and still turn away. He was quiet for a moment. She's been saying your post is manipulative, that you're trying to poison people against her. I let out a soft laugh. A manipulator always hates when the mirror shows up. He sighed. Tommy's hearing about it at school. Some of the moms are whispering. He'll be okay, I said, because he knows the truth, and you'll remind him that standing up for what's right always costs something. I want to do better, he said. Then start now. 2 days later, I got a call from the school. Tommy had gotten into a fight. I was in the car within minutes. When I arrived, he sat on a bench outside the office, his eyes puffy but dry. The principal gave me a tired look. "He threw a milk carton at another boy," she said. "He says the boy called you a thief." I turned to Tommy. "Is that true?" He nodded. "He said his mom told him you got arrested for stealing." The principal sighed. "Mrs. Whitman, I understand this is a complicated time for your family, but violence— We'll talk at home," I said firmly. She hesitated, then nodded. "Of course." On the drive home, Tommy didn't speak. When we pulled into the driveway, I turned off the ignition and faced him. "I'm not mad," I said, "but we don't throw things to fix things." His voice cracked. I didn't know what else to do. He was lying. "Lies don't last," I said. "But our reactions do. People remember how we stand up, not just that we stood." He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "I just want them to stop talking about you." "I know," I whispered. "But sometimes the only way to stop a rumor is to outlive it." He leaned into me, and I held him close. And I realized this fight wasn't just mine anymore. It was his, too. The next week brought a surprise. Clara reached out again. "We've had so many responses to your piece," she said. "I was wondering, would you consider doing a live interview?" My heart skipped. "Live?" "Yes, nothing fancy, just audio. A recorded conversation for our podcast. You'd be speaking to women across the country." I hesitated. I wasn't a polished speaker. I didn't have Brianna's camera-ready voice. But maybe that was the point. I said yes. The day of the interview, I wore my Sunday best, even though no one could see me. A soft lavender blouse and the silver pendant my late husband had given me the year Michael was born. The host, a kind woman named Sharon, welcomed me with warmth. "Norma, you've stirred something," she said. "Women are reaching out saying your words helped them find theirs. Why do you think that is?" I paused. "Because we know what it feels like," I said slowly. "To be betrayed quietly. To be dismissed not with a slap but with a smile. To be told we imagined it. To be told we're bitter or difficult or losing our memory." Sharon was silent, letting the weight land. "And we know," I continued, "that when someone finally tells the truth, it doesn't echo, it rings." The interview went viral within days. It wasn't explosive. It was steady. But steady is what changes the tide. That weekend, as Tommy and I baked cornbread together, his favorite, I glanced at my phone and saw a text from an unknown number. I opened it. "You win the crowd, but we'll see what the judge says. This isn't over. B." I looked at the screen, then turned it off. Because sometimes, when your name is being rebuilt in the light, the shadows try to crawl back in. But I had learned something. Shadows don't survive the morning. And mine was just beginning. The morning after Brianna's text, I found myself standing in front of the old Whitman house. My house. The one I had lived in for over 30 years. The one Michael was born in. The one that had slowly, over time and silence, become hers. It still looked the same, the pale blue shutters, the big oak tree that dropped acorns on the driveway every fall, the porch swing that hadn't moved in months. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. I had come for one reason, to retrieve what was left. Vanessa had arranged it. A court-ordered retrieval of my personal items, documents, heirlooms, photo albums that Brianna had refused to hand over, claiming they were communal property. The judge disagreed. Michael was supposed to meet me, but he was running late. So I stood on the front step, breathing in memories and preparing for battle. The door opened before I could knock, and there she was, Brianna. Still perfect on the outside, ponytail sharp, lipstick fresh, wearing one of those high-waisted dresses that made her look like an anchor woman, but her eyes were cracked glass. She didn't step aside. "I thought the court gave you until noon," she said coldly. "It's yksitoista, 50. I suppose punctuality is the new rebellion," she muttered, arms crossed. Behind her, I could see the house had changed, furniture rearranged, my mother's china cabinet gone. Photos of Tommy replaced with generic wall prints of beaches and quotes about hustle. "You redecorated," I said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. "New season, new energy." "You mean new lies." That hit. She stepped aside without a word. The house smelled different, lemon cleaner and some kind of sharp perfume. Nothing like the warm vanilla and cinnamon I used to keep in the air. Even the sounds were wrong. No hum of the old refrigerator. No creak from the back hallway, just silence. "I boxed up your things," she said, leading me to the dining room. "They're in here." I saw 4 boxes stacked on the table. Too neat, too light. "These aren't all of them," I said. "Where's the red cedar chest from the attic?" "It was broken," she said flatly. "We donated it." My jaw clenched. That chest held my father's war letters, my wedding veil, Tommy's first shoes. "Then I'll need the name of the donation center," I said. "You can call them," she shrugged. "They don't keep everything." I looked at her. "You're erasing me." "No," she replied. "I'm correcting the narrative." There it was, her truth. Control wasn't just a habit. It was her faith, and I had challenged it. "I read your blog post," she said suddenly, walking to the window. "So brave, so performative." I told the truth. "No. You told your version," she said, turning around. "Do you even hear yourself, this victim act? You're not the saint you pretend to be." I stepped closer. "I never claimed to be a saint, but I was a mother, and I was good at it. You hated that." "I hated that you judged me from the second we met," she snapped. "That you never thought I was good enough for Michael, that you smiled and smiled while sharpening your knives in secret." I shook my head. "I welcomed you. I tried. But you wanted more than love. You wanted ownership." She crossed her arms, voice shaking. "You think you're some righteous matriarch, Norma? You're just another bitter old woman who lost her place at the head of the table." I let her words hang. Then, quietly, "I never needed the table. I built the house around it." Michael arrived 10 minutes later, breathless and apologetic. "She boxed up the wrong things," I said. "Some are missing." He turned to Brianna, visibly exhausted. "Can we just let Mom get what's hers, please?" She didn't answer. Just walked into the kitchen, slamming the door behind her. Michael rubbed his face. "I don't recognize her anymore." "She's unraveling," I said. "And unraveling people pull harder on the threads." Together, we carried the boxes to the car. I didn't look back when we drove away. Not until we turned the corner. And even then, I didn't see a home. Just a house with locked doors. That night, I opened the boxes on the inn's living room floor. Some linens. A few framed photos oddly chosen. My favorite one of Tommy at age 5 was missing, but a cracked picture of an old family barbecue was there. And at the bottom of the last box, something strange. A small black notebook. Not mine. It looked like a planner, Brianna's. Old, maybe last year's. I opened it without thinking, and then I froze. Inside were notes, bullet points, phrases. Gradual withdrawal of Access Trust Fund. Frame incident around birthday, maximize witnesses. Check legal implications for ring accusation. My fingers trembled. This wasn't a diary. This was a plan. Proof. Not just of cruelty, but of intent. I called Vanessa. She came immediately, flashlight in hand, gloves in her bag. "This is gold," she said. "Did she know it was in the box?" "She wouldn't have let it out of the house if she did." Vanessa flipped through the pages. "This could change everything, not just the trust, but custody." I blinked. "You think we should push for full custody?" "Norma," she said gently. She wrote down her steps to emotionally destabilize you and take control of her child's inheritance. That's not just strategy. That's abuse. I nodded slowly. Then a thought struck me. What if she realizes it's missing? "She will," Vanessa said. "And she'll panic, which is exactly what we want." And panic she did. The next morning, I received 3 texts and 2 voicemails from Brianna. "Did you take something from the box? Something that isn't yours? You need to return that planner immediately. It's private." "This is theft." I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to Vanessa, who was already drafting an updated petition for the court. By the end of the week, we'd submitted the planner as evidence. And Brianna? She'd gone quiet. Too quiet. But quiet doesn't mean safe. Quiet means coiling. And I'd learned by now, people like her strike hardest right before they fall. It had been 4 days since we submitted the planner into evidence, and not a single word had come from Brianna. No calls, no texts, no false blog posts, not even a veiled message sent through Michael. For most people, silence might have meant surrender. But with Brianna, silence meant something far worse. She was thinking, scheming, coiling tighter before the strike. Vanessa warned me not to let my guard down. "She's going to push back," she said. "She's calculating, Norma. And people like that don't go down with grace. They detonate on the way out." She was right. The detonation came the next afternoon. I was at the library with Tommy, helping him with a school project about civil rights leaders. He had chosen Fannie Lou Hamer. "She reminds me of you," he said proudly as he typed up his final paragraph. "How so?" "She didn't back down, even when everyone tried to scare her." I smiled at that. "You picked a good one." I was proud. And for a moment, at peace, until my phone buzzed. A single notification. Breaking. Local woman faces mental evaluation request amid family feud. I stared at it, then clicked. Brianna. She had filed a formal request with the court. A mental health competency hearing. Against me. The article quoted sources close to the situation, suggesting I was experiencing confusion, paranoia, and possible early dementia. She had flipped the board. The planner, the blog post, even the public support I had gained ground. So now, she was trying to prove that everything I'd done was a result of mental decline, that I was dangerous, unstable, that I didn't belong in court, that I didn't belong in Tommy's life. Vanessa drove straight to the inn that evening. She tossed the printed motion on the coffee table. "This is what desperation looks like," she said. I sat back, heart tight but steady. Can she win with this? She can try, but it's not enough to say someone's incompetent. She needs documentation, medical backing. She has none. Exactly. But it's still a stunt, one that casts doubt. And doubt slows things down, hurts your credibility, and in some cases wins sympathy for her. Tommy sat quietly in the corner, pretending to read, but his eyes were on us. He heard every word. That night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "Grandma, are you sick?" I sat beside him on the edge of the bed. "No, baby, I'm not. But Mom says, your mom is scared," I said gently. And sometimes when people are scared, they say things that aren't true to try and protect themselves. He looked at me. "But who protects you?" I smiled softly. "I've got you, don't I?" His small arms wrapped around me, and I held on a little longer than usual. 2 days later, I stood in a clinic waiting room under fluorescent lights as a psychiatrist flipped through my intake forms. Dr. Helen Martinez, mid, 50S, sharp eyes, warm smile, the kind of doctor who didn't coddle but didn't condescend either. "Norma," she said, "I'll be honest. Court-ordered mental evaluations for elderly clients usually come from cases of clear instability or long-term health issues." "I have neither," I said. She nodded. "I believe you. But I have to do the full evaluation. Cognitive test, short-term memory, emotional regulation, and a few interview-style questions. Standard. I went through it all: patterns, recall, emotional scenario responses. At the end, she lowered her clipboard. "Well," she said, "your mind is as sharp as your words." Relief bloomed in my chest, but I didn't smile. "Not yet." "Can you give me something in writing?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "Already printed. I assumed you'd want a copy for your lawyer." "Smart woman." Before I left, she paused me at the door. "You know, it's not common for people your age to fight this hard. Most just want peace." "I do want peace," I said, "but not at the cost of erasure." She nodded once. "I hope your grandson knows how lucky he is." I didn't answer. I just turned and walked out with my spine a little straighter. Vanessa filed the doctor's statement with the court within hours. It was a slam-dunk certified proof that I was of sound mind, capable, and in full possession of my faculties. And still, Brianna doubled down. That night, Michael stopped by the inn with Tommy, visibly shaken. "She showed up at my work," he said. "Said I was letting a mentally unfit woman manipulate our son." "She really wants me gone," I said. "She's trying to break you," he said. "She'll have to try harder." Michael sat down across from me. "I think she knows it's over, but she wants to take something from you before it ends." "She already did," I said softly. "She took my son, and my silence." He met my gaze. "And now, I'm taking them back." Later that evening, as Tommy brushed his teeth, he looked at me in the mirror. "Grandma?" "Yes?" "If they try to take me away from you, what happens?" I bent down so we were eye to eye. "No one's taking you," I said. Not while I'm standing." He nodded. Then he handed me a folded paper. "Mom left this at Dad's," he said. "I think she forgot it." I opened it. My heart stopped. It was a list. Names, numbers, a script. It looked like a prep document for a staged intervention, something to make me look unstable in front of friends and family. The final line read, "If she resists, call Officer Trainer. He owes me a favor. Officer Trainer." He'd responded to a call at the Whitman house years ago, Brianna's old high school friend, now a local deputy. "She was going to fake it," I whispered. Tommy looked confused. "Fake what?" "Proof," I said. "Proof I don't belong. But now I had her proof. Her lies. In writing. And this time, there'd be no shadow for her to hide behind. The next morning, I sat in Vanessa's office with the folded paper spread between us like a loaded weapon. She read it 3 times, silently, then aloud, then silently again. Every time, her expression tightened. "This is a script," she said finally. "A performance. Names, cues, even a backup plan in case you resist. Norma, this isn't just petty. It's premeditated." "She was going to stage a breakdown," I said, my voice low. "Call in favors. Make it look real." Vanessa looked up at me. "She wasn't just going to fight you in court. She was going to remove you from the equation entirely." I took a breath, held it, then exhaled. "Can we use this?" "Oh, we'll do more than use it," she said, standing. "This is enough for a judicial review. With this and the planner, we can push for an emergency motion not just to freeze the trust, but to trigger a custody hearing within 10 days. My hands gripped the armrests. "And if we win?" Vanessa's eyes softened. "Then Tommy stays with you. Full time, legally." I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just nodded. Because victory, when it's been clawed from despair, doesn't taste sweet. It tastes like breath finally exhaled. We filed the motion that afternoon. The clerk at the courthouse raised her eyebrows as she scanned the attached exhibits. "You're not messing around," she murmured. "No, ma'am," Vanessa said. "We're not." The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. 7 days. 1 week until everything changed. That evening, as the sun set over the town's rusted rooftops, I sat on the porch of the inn with a cup of mint tea and Tommy at my side. He was sketching quietly his new favorite hobby. I peeked over. He was drawing a courtroom. 3 chairs. One had "Dad" written in wobbly letters. One had "Me." The third? "Grandma." I smiled, then noticed something else. Across the room in the sketch was a figure standing in the back, alone, hair tied tight, no label. But I knew. "She looks lonely," I said gently. "She is," Tommy replied without looking up. "She always tells me love is earned, but then she stops loving when I don't agree with her." I blinked. "Children see more than we think." "And how do you think love works?" I asked. He finally looked up at me. "It's not a trophy," he said. "It's a roof." I didn't say a word. I just put my arm around him. 3 days later, the retaliation came. Brianna filed a motion for a restraining order, claimed I had threatened her safety, instigated defamation, and manipulated a minor. The court denied it immediately, citing lack of evidence, but the point wasn't to win. The point was to stain, to smear. Vanessa wasn't fazed. "This is good," she said. "Every desperate move she makes paints the bigger picture. Judges see through patterns." "But Michael?" He was breaking. "She screams at me now," he admitted during one of our porch talks. "At night, says I chose you, that I made her into the villain." I looked at him, heart aching but resolute. "Michael," I said softly, "she made herself the villain. All you did was open the curtain." He rubbed his face. "I don't even know who I'm married to." "You don't have to figure it out today," I said. "But you do need to decide one thing." "What?" "Whose future do you want Tommy to remember?" He didn't answer, but he didn't leave either. And that told me enough for now. The weekend before the hearing, I visited my old house one last time. Michael was home. Brianna was not. I asked to see the attic. He hesitated, then nodded. "It's all still there," he said. I climbed those stairs slowly, each step a memory, each creak a prayer. The red cedar chest was there, hidden under a tarp, but untouched. I opened it and felt tears spring as my fingers brushed fabric and paper. My wedding veil, my father's dog tags, a photo of Michael as a baby, asleep on my chest. "This was your history," I whispered, and she tried to make it hers. Michael appeared in the doorway, watching me. "I didn't know she kept it from you," he said. "Yes, you did," I replied gently. "You just didn't want to see it." He nodded. "That's what hurts the most." The night before the hearing, Tommy came to my room. He held something behind his back. "I made you something," he said. He handed me a folded piece of thick paper cardstock, taped at the edges, colored in carefully. On the front was a drawing of the two of us, me in my purple cardigan, him in his school hoodie. Behind us, a big oak tree. Our tree. Inside, he had written, "To Grandma, you don't need to be the mom or the dad. You're the hero." I hugged him tighter than I ever had before. And in that moment, I knew, no matter what happened in court, she couldn't win. Because she had already lost this. His heart. And mine. Tuesday dawned gray and heavy, as if the sky itself understood the weight of what was about to unfold. I dressed carefully. Not to impress, but to stand. A soft gray suit I hadn't worn since Michael's college graduation. Modest earrings. My mother's old brooch polished and pinned over my heart like a shield. Vanessa met me on the courthouse steps. Her suit was navy, her stance firm. "You ready?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm here." She smiled. "That's enough." Inside, the courtroom was cold. Not from temperature, but tension. Brianna sat at the petitioner's table, her attorney beside her, sharp-shouldered and smug. She wore all white. A statement, I supposed. But to me, it looked like a costume, like someone who needed fabric to convince the world she was clean. Michael sat in the back, alone. Tommy was with a friend for the day, safe and far from the storm. The judge, a woman named Clarissa Wilton, entered promptly at 9 a.m. She was mid, 60s, steel gray hair, a calm face lined with decades of human wreckage. She didn't look at either of us when she spoke. "This court is convened for the purpose of reviewing custodial standing of minor Thomas Whitman in light of new evidence submitted by Norma Whitman and counsel. We will also consider petitioner Brianna Whitman's claims regarding mental incompetency and undue influence." Vanessa stood, clear, precise. She laid out our timeline, the ring, the party, the false accusations, the planner, the list Tommy had found. And then she handed the notebook and the scripted plan to the clerk. Judge Wilton flipped through the pages slowly, her expression unreadable. Next, Brianna's lawyer tried to deflect. "She's bitter," he said, gesturing to me, "and dangerous. The planner proves nothing. Anyone could have written it. There's no handwriting confirmation." Vanessa was ready. "We've already had a preliminary analysis done," she said, holding up a folder. "We can provide an affidavit from a handwriting expert. And more importantly, the list includes phone numbers, contacts we've cross-referenced. Some of those people were on record as being approached by Mrs. Whitman." Judge Wilton held up a hand. "Enough. I'll review the documents in full." She turned to me. "Mrs. Whitman, please approach the stand." I stood. My knees didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I was ready. They asked me everything. Why I believed Brianna targeted me. Why I hadn't pressed charges when the ring incident happened. Why I chose to speak publicly. I told the truth. The whole truth. Calm. Direct. No tears. I didn't need emotion to prove pain. "I did not seek vengeance," I said. "I sought clarity. For my name. For my grandson. For the family I raised. And do you believe your daughter-in-law is unfit to raise your grandson?" I didn't answer right away. Then, "I believe that a child raised in a home where lies are tools and truth is a threat will not grow whole. And yes, I believe Tommy deserves better." The courtroom was still. No coughs. No shifting. Just breath, held tight. Then Judge Wilton turned to Brianna. "Mrs. Whitman, would you like to speak?" Brianna stood slowly, composed, but her eyes betrayed her. Tight, defensive. "I loved that boy like he was mine," she said. "I only ever tried to protect him. Norma, she's always hated me. She resents that I became the woman of the house. That Michael chose you?" Judge Wilton asked. "Yes. And yet you prepared a document outlining a fake intervention plan? with an officer named in advance? Brianna's throat tightened. It wasn't real. Just notes, thoughts. Do you often jot down psychological warfare as a to-do list? The judge asked dryly. Brianna's lawyer cut in, objecting. Speculation. Sustained, Wilton muttered, then leaned forward. Mrs. Whitman, did you or did you not place a valuable ring into your mother-in-law's purse during your birthday dinner with the intent to accuse her of theft? Silence. Her jaw tensed. I was upset, she said finally. I made a bad call, but it was a test to see if she'd take it. Gasps rippled through the room. My heart didn't break. It steeled. Judge Wilton nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. Court adjourned for deliberation. 30 minutes. The longest 30 minutes of my life. I sat in the hallway. Vanessa beside me. Michael on the other end of the bench, hands folded. I'm sorry, he said softly, for everything. I looked at him. Do you still love her? He didn't answer, and that was answer enough. We were called back in. Judge Wilton took her seat. Her voice was clear, crisp. This court finds that Norma Whitman is of sound mental health, has provided credible evidence of psychological manipulation, and has acted in the best interests of her grandson. Brianna's face remained frozen, but her hand twitched. Effective immediately, the judge continued. Temporary full custody of minor Thomas Whitman will be awarded to Norma Whitman. All financial decisions regarding his trust shall be placed under judicial oversight until further notice. And then, the final blow. This court will also open an investigation into potential custodial misconduct. Mrs. Brianna Whitman is to refrain from direct contact with the child pending further review. It was done. The lie had been undone in full daylight. Brianna stood up suddenly. She didn't cry, didn't yell. She just walked out. Vanessa leaned over, whispering, "That's what the end of a performance looks like, when the stage is gone." I stayed seated for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. Then I smiled. For the first time in months, the air felt light, clean. Mine. The house was quiet. Not like a hush after a storm, but like a space no longer haunted. Michael stood in the foyer of the Whitman house, a single suitcase at his feet. The rest had already been moved, some to the garage, some back to the inn. The wedding photos were gone from the hallway. The laughter of Brianna's curated dinner parties had evaporated from the walls. He looked lost, but not grieving. Just paused, as if he'd stepped out of a fog and didn't yet know the shape of the world ahead. She left early this morning, he said when I walked in. Didn't say goodbye. I nodded. Sometimes leaving is the only truth they ever tell. He handed me an envelope. She wanted me to give you this. Inside, a single page, handwritten. You won the court, Norma, but let's see how long you keep the boy. I give it a year. Maybe less. He's mine, whether you like it or not. B. I folded it once, then twice, then slid it into my purse without comment. Michael watched me. Doesn't that make you angry? I met his eyes. No, it makes me sure. Of what? That she never loved him. Not really. He looked away, jaw tight. She loved the control, I added. The image, the idea of being the one in charge of someone's story. Michael exhaled, long and low. I've been trying to figure out when I stopped recognizing her, he said. You didn't, I corrected. You never did. You just wanted so badly to believe in her goodness that you painted over the cracks. He nodded, slowly. Like every word felt like a key turning in a rusty lock. Are you staying here tonight? I asked gently. No, he said. I'm done with this house. Back at the inn, Tommy greeted me with a hug that came at full speed. I saw the ruling online, he said. Dad told me everything. I held him tight. You're safe, baby, I whispered. No more hiding, no more secrets. He pulled back and looked at me with a seriousness far beyond his years. Will she try to come back? She might, I said honestly. But we'll be ready, and you'll never be alone in it. He nodded, as if accepting a mission. Later that night, after Tommy had gone to bed and the moonlight spilled through the curtains like soft silk, I sat at my old desk in the corner of the room. I opened a fresh journal. Not to blog, not for an article, just for me. And I began to write not the past, but the after. The moments that would come now that the noise had quieted. Tommy's next birthday party. Sunday breakfasts with too much syrup and not enough manners. Late-night movies in our pajamas. I wrote about building, not surviving. About growing, not proving. About living, not explaining. Because the war was over, and now we could finally be. The next day, the doorbell rang just after noon. I opened it to find Clara, my editor from the blog, with a camera crew behind her. "I know you said no interviews," she said breathlessly, "but we've had hundreds of requests. People want to hear you, see you." "I'm not a symbol," I said. "I know," she replied, "but you're a story, and stories save people." I hesitated. Then I looked past her at Tommy, sitting on the porch swing, sketching another courtroom. Maybe it was time for him to see what healing looked like in full light. The interview was set in the community center. Nothing fancy, a few chairs, a backdrop of soft blue. I wore what I always wore, my cardigan, my brooch, and a calm I had earned. Clara asked gentle questions about the court, about truth, about family, but it was her last question that stayed with me. "What do you want people to remember most about this journey?" I thought for a moment, then said that the truth doesn't shout, it endures. That justice isn't always loud, it's often quiet and stubborn. And that sometimes the most powerful act a woman can do is stay. Stay when they lie. Stay when they scheme. Stay herself. The room was silent. Clara blinked, then nodded. "That's going to help someone," she said softly. "I hope it helps her," I replied. She smiled. "You mean Brianna?" "No," I said. "I mean the next woman, the next mother, the next grandmother. The next woman sitting in a room she no longer feels welcome in, wondering if it's worth standing up." Clara leaned forward. "And is it?" "Yes," I said. "Even if you stand alone." That night, after dinner, Tommy brought out the sketch he'd been working on. It was a courtroom again, but this time, it was different. There were no judges, no lawyers, just a round table. At it sat 3 people. Him, me, and Michael. Over their heads, he'd written, "Family, no matter the storm." I hugged him. No words, just a heartbeat pressed to his. And I realized this wasn't a courtroom anymore. This was a home. The days that followed felt lighter. There were still errands to run, dishes to wash, bills to pay, but the air no longer pressed down on my shoulders like it used to. It moved freely through the hallways of the inn, brushing against curtains that now danced rather than drooped. Tommy laughed more. Michael smiled more. And I existed without bracing for impact. But healing, I learned, isn't the same as forgetting, and peace doesn't mean the past is done whispering. It just means you're no longer afraid to listen. The first whisper came through the mailbox. An envelope. Thick, cream-colored, expensive. My name written in bold cursive ink, unmistakably Brianna's. I opened it carefully. Inside, an invitation. The Women of Will County Business Alliance. Annual Gala and Recognition Ceremony. Honoring Brianna Whitman, Woman of Resilience. I let out a quiet laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was so her. When the walls fell around her, she didn't admit defeat. She rewrote the script. Victim, underdog, misunderstood woman in a cruel system. The diamond ring? An emotional lapse under pressure. The fake intervention? A misinterpreted mental health concern. She wasn't retreating, she was rebranding. Michael read it over my shoulder. "You gonna go?" I looked at him, surprised. "To that?" He shrugged. "You were invited. Probably as bait. Or as proof," he said, "that she can pretend nothing happened and still hold a stage." I held the invite for a long moment, then folded it cleanly. "Let her have her stage," I said. "I have my audience." He smiled at that. "Still, might be fun to crash a party." I raised an eyebrow. "You offering to be my +1? He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Maybe it's time I stop watching from the sidelines." That weekend, we hosted a small dinner at the inn. Just a few old friends, some neighbors, Clara and her partner, Vanessa. People who had supported us without needing the spotlight. Tommy made name cards for each guest, folded them like tiny tents, and decorated them with stars and stick figure portraits. He seated me at the head of the table. "Because you're the boss," he said matter-of-factly. Vanessa raised her glass midway through the meal. "To Norma," she said, "for reminding all of us that dignity doesn't ask for permission." The table applauded. And for once, I didn't shrink from the praise. Because it wasn't about pride, it was about presence. I was here, still standing, still seen. After everyone left and the dishes were done, Tommy and I sat on the porch swing. The air was warm, the stars blinking like they had secrets to share. "Grandma?" "Yes, baby. Can we plant something?" I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "In the back garden. Like a tree or flowers, something that stays, a symbol." "Of course. What would you want to plant?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "Sunflowers. They're tall, and they turn toward the light." I nodded, heart swelling. "Then sunflowers it is." We went the next morning, bought seeds, gloves, and 2 big bags of soil, the kind that promises life even after a fire. Michael joined us. He knelt beside Tommy in the dirt, showing him how deep to dig. I watched from the porch, holding a pitcher of lemonade, feeling the sun on my face, watching my boys rebuild, not with blueprints, but with hands, with care, with choice. Later that week, I got a call from a local community college. They had seen my interview. A professor had even assigned it as part of a media and ethics course. "We'd love for you to come speak," the woman said. "We don't want the courtroom version. We want your version, the part no one wrote down." I said yes, not because I needed to be heard, but because someone might need to hear. The next woman, the next grandmother, the next quiet fighter in the shadows. On the night of the gala, I took the invitation from my purse, walked it over to the fireplace, and let it fall into the flames. Michael watched silently from across the room. "You sure?" I nodded. "She wants to wear her crown made of ashes. Let her. I have no use for smoke." He smiled. "You know, for what it's worth, Tommy told me you're braver than any superhero he's ever seen." I laughed, touched. "I don't need a cape," I said. "I have a cardigan and truth." Later that night, I stood at the edge of the garden. The sunflower sprouts had started to push through. Tiny, fragile, hopeful. Beside them, Tommy had planted a small, hand-painted sign, planted by Tommy and Grandma, for light. Always for light. I stood there a long time, letting the quiet remind me. The past was loud. But the future? The future grows in silence. Spring drifted into early summer like a song with no chorus, just a long, slow melody of warmth and light. Tommy's sunflowers were growing fast, stretching higher each week, their stems strong, their faces always turned toward the morning light. Every time I passed them, I touched the leaves like I was checking a child's forehead for fever. They were our marker, our proof. That from something buried, something broken, life could still push through. It had been almost 2 months since the court ruling. 2 months without a single word from Brianna. No calls, no messages, no threats in white envelopes. At first, I'd braced for it for her return, for some clever attempt to reinsert herself into our lives like smoke slipping under a locked door. But nothing came, and that silence, somehow, was more unnerving than the noise. One afternoon, Michael came by with an old photo album tucked under his arm. "Found it in the storage unit," he said. "Figured you'd want it back." I opened it on the kitchen table. Dust clung to the plastic sleeves like forgotten snow. Tommy crawled up beside me. There were pictures of Michael as a boy, muddy sneakers, gap-toothed grins, the same twinkle in his eyes that now danced in his son's. But halfway through the album, a photo slipped loose and fell to the floor. I picked it up. It was me, maybe 30 years ago. Sitting on the steps of this same inn, Tommy's age, holding a bowl of cherries, laughing like the world hadn't yet tried to silence me. Michael leaned over. "You always looked like you were holding something sacred." "I was," I said. "Myself." He nodded. "That's what Brianna could never understand. Because she never found herself first," I replied. "She only ever borrowed her reflection from other people's approval." Later that night, as I closed the windows before bed, I saw headlights pull into the driveway. A familiar car. Silver. Luxurious. My breath caught in my throat. "Brianna." She stepped out slowly. No drama. No scene. Just her hair tied back. No makeup. Heels clicking against the pavement. I stood at the door, hand on the knob, waiting. She didn't knock. She just stood there. Then finally, quietly, "I don't want anything. I need to say something." I opened the door, but I didn't invite her in. She noticed. Her jaw tightened, then loosened. Everything fell apart, she said. I lost my job. The gala was a joke. Nobody really clapped. I said nothing. She looked at the ground. They only liked me when I was winning. That's usually the case with people who only perform love, I replied. Her eyes flicked up. You think I'm a monster? No, I said. I think you're a very scared woman who mistook control for love, and now you're alone. She winced. I didn't come for pity. I didn't offer any. Silence stretched between us. Then she pulled something from her purse. Tommy's drawing, the one he made during the custody hearing. The courtroom with 3 chairs. I found this in Michael's old things, she said. I stared at it for a long time. I kept thinking, I'm not in it. No, I said gently. You were never with us. You were always trying to be above us. She blinked hard. He's different without me. Better, I corrected. That cut deep. She nodded slowly, as if accepting a final verdict. Do you think he'll ever forgive me? I looked her in the eye. That depends on what you do next. Not today, not tomorrow, but in all the silent days after. She took a step back. Tell him I'm sorry? No, I said firmly. If you want him to hear it, you say it yourself. When he's ready. Brianna turned. And this time, she did walk away. Not in defeat, but in truth, maybe for the first time in her life. I didn't tell Tommy about her visit right away. Not because I was hiding anything, but because some truths grow best in quiet soil. Instead, we spent the week planning his summer. Museum days, library trips, cooking lessons, his latest obsession, making the perfect peach cobbler. Michael offered to help. Can't cook to save my life, he said, but I can wash dishes. You'll need to. I laughed. That boy uses every pan in the house. On Friday, Tommy surprised me with breakfast eggs, too salty, toast slightly burnt, and a card under my mug that read, Thank you for giving me back my name. Love, Tommy. That night, I sat on the porch alone, watching the wind move through the sunflowers, listening to the silence that used to scare me. But now, it wrapped around me like a lullaby. In the distance, the town lights flickered on one by one, and I realized the woman I had been, the one who kept her head down, who apologized for existing, who let others narrate her life, she was gone. In her place stood someone older, stronger, wiser, and finally, free. It was the first day of summer, real summer, the kind that doesn't wait for the calendar's permission, the kind that smells like fresh grass, barbecue smoke, and promise. Tommy was in the backyard, barefoot, running circles around the sunflower patch with a kite he'd built from an old bedsheet and 2 popsicle sticks. Michael was painting the back fence, and I was sitting in a wicker chair on the porch, a glass of lemonade in hand, my heart settled in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not quiet, not numb, just steady. It had been 3 weeks since Brianna stood at our doorstep and said goodbye without really saying it. Since then, no more letters, no cryptic calls, no sudden appearances, just space. Maybe she had finally stepped out of the war zone she created. Maybe not. Either way, she was no longer a storm cloud hovering over us. And Tommy? He flourished. He slept sounder, laughed louder, asked questions like, why do sunflowers follow the sun? And, do you think Grandma could be a superhero in real life? And once, while we were grocery shopping, he reached for my hand and said, You don't have to worry anymore. I'll grow up and take care of you. I nearly wept next to the cereal boxes, not because I needed his care, but because he offered it so freely, with no guilt, no strings, no performance, just love. I'd started writing again, not for the blog, not for the court, but for myself. Journals filled with stories I hadn't dared to tell when I still thought silence was safety. Stories of my own mother, of dancing barefoot on hot concrete as a girl in Georgia, of the first time I knew a lie could look like a compliment, of the second time I knew I had to leave before I forgot my name. Every word reminded me that I had always been strong, even when I didn't feel it, even when I wasn't thanked for it, even when the world said, sit down, and I did. But I never stopped planning how to stand again. One Saturday morning, Vanessa dropped by with a surprise, a printed copy of the blog post she'd submitted on my behalf to a national women's writing contest. I blinked at her. You what? I submitted your post, the one about courtroom truth and motherhood, and the cardigan. Vanessa. You won. She handed me a certificate and a letter. Norma Whitman, first place. Truth Teller Essay, National Women's Writing Foundation. I stared at it for a long time, not out of disbelief, but out of awe. Not because someone finally saw me, but because I finally let myself be seen. We celebrated with peach cobbler Tommy's version, which still leaned heavily into sugar and chaos. Neighbors dropped by. Clara showed up with a small camera crew again, asking if I'd consider hosting a podcast segment for women over 50. We're calling it Late Bloomers, she grinned. Appropriate, I said. I've got more bloom in me than most 20-year-olds. One evening, as fireflies danced outside the window, Tommy crawled into bed beside me with his sketch pad. I made a new one, he whispered. I flipped it open. This time, it wasn't a courtroom. It was a garden. A table under an oak tree. Me, Michael, and Tommy laughing. 3 chairs. 1 cake. Sunflowers behind us, standing tall like guardians. At the bottom, he wrote, "This is home. This is ours." Before lights out, he asked, "Do you think Mom will ever come back?" I tucked the blanket around his legs and said, "Maybe. People change. Or try to. Would you let her?" I paused. "Forgiveness doesn't mean you let someone hurt you again," I said. "It means you stop letting them own the hurt." He nodded slowly. "Okay. Then, I think I'll forgive her, when I'm ready, but not yet." I kissed his forehead. "That's okay, baby. You take all the time you need." In the morning, I went to the sunflower patch with a mug of coffee. Birds chirped. Tommy's little sign still stood firm in the soil. For light, always for light. I knelt down and added something underneath, carved with a stick, shaky but legible. And for truth, always for truth. Because that's what this had always been about. Not revenge, not winning, but truth. The quiet kind. The kind that walks barefoot, with hands in the dirt and hope in its chest. The kind that doesn't need an audience to be real. It just is. So, here I am. Not the villain Brianna tried to make me. Not the silent woman I once was. But Norma Whitman. Mother. Grandmother. Survivor. Gardener of truth. And if you're reading this, if you're sitting in the middle of your own storm, wondering if you're allowed to speak, if you'll be believed, if anyone will stand with you, let me say this plainly. You don't need permission. You don't need proof. You only need to begin. Because justice isn't always loud, but it listens. And sometimes, it starts in a whisper. "Grandma, Mom secretly put the diamond ring in your purse while you were pouring tea." And from that whisper, the whole world changes. Forever. This story is a reminder that truth, no matter how quietly it begins, always finds its voice. Norma's journey teaches us that dignity is not granted by others. It is claimed by standing firm in the face of betrayal, especially when the betrayal comes from within your own family. It shows us that justice isn't always swift or dramatic, but when guided by patience, love, and clarity, it prevails. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds older women so often overlooked or underestimated that their strength doesn't fade with time. It deepens. In the end, the greatest power we have is to hold on to our truth, protect those we love, and bloom no matter how late the season.